In 2017, some of the absolute smartest computer scientists on the planet they were completely stumped by a two-letter word.
Yeah, the word it, which sounds crazy, right?
It really does. Because they would feed an AI this super simple sentence like, the animal didn't cross the street because it was too tired, and the computer would just freeze up.
It had absolutely no idea if it referred to the street or the animal.
Right. And fixing that one tiny, contextual blind spot, it didn't just tweak an algorithm. It basically unlocked ChatGPT.
Oh, entirely. I mean, it changed the world.
But what's truly wild to me is that understanding how that machine finally learned to pay attention, it actually explains why your boss puts you to sleep at a Monday morning meeting.
It really is this massive interconnected web. We are talking about the fundamental architecture of how an idea successfully transfers from one entity to another.
Whether that entity is made of silicon or biological tissue.
Exactly.
And so that is exactly our mission for this deep dive today. We are exploring the hidden architecture of attention and communication. We're going to look at how information is processed, prioritized, and physically projected.
And we've got some amazing material to pull from.
We really do. We're looking at the legendary 2017 Google Brain paper, Attention is All You Need, which is the literal blueprint for modern AI.
Yeah, alongside this really rigorous Swiss Armed Forces study on leadership.
Right. Plus some cutting-edge cognitive strategies for public speaking, and even the biological physics of human vocal resonance.
So it's really a journey from the purely mathematical to the deeply physical, because ultimately, whether you're trying to optimize a neural network, pitch a new project, or just lead a team effectively, the underlying currency you are trading in is exactly the same.
Which is attention.
Right.
Attention. So before we can hack human attention, I feel like we really need to understand how we taught machines to pay attention first, because this is the breakthrough that revolutionized natural language processing.
Yeah, the generative AI world we live in today doesn't exist without it. And to understand the breakthrough, you first have to understand the massive bottleneck that was holding everything back.
Right, the older models.
Exactly. Before that 2017 paper, if you wanted an AI to process language, you typically used recurrent neural networks, or RNNs. And RNNs had this fatal flaw. They were strictly sequential.
Meaning they had to read one word at a time.
Yes.
Just crawling along.
So if I give an RNN a paragraph to read, it reads the first word, tries to memorize it, moves to the second word, updates its memory, and just, slowly crawls down the line.
Right. And the mechanism it used for that memory was called a hidden state. You can think of a hidden state like a tiny index card.
Okay, I like that.
So as the AI reads word by word, has to constantly erase and rewrite the summary of what it just read onto that single fixed-size card.
Oh, wow. So if you fed it a really long paragraph...
By the time it reaches the last sentence, the summary of the first sentence has basically been overwritten, or just deeply, deeply compressed. So it suffers from a massive information bottleneck.
It practically forgets the beginning of the thought. Plus, because it has to wait for word 3 to finish before it can look at word 4, you just cannot train it in parallel. It was agonizingly slow.
Okay, let's unpack this. If an RNN is like reading a book one single word at a time through a tiny sliding peephole.
Yes, perfect analogy.
Then the transformer architecture, introduced in the 2017 Google Brain paper, basically just rips that peephole away.
Exactly.
It looks at the entire page at exactly the same time, right? It draws connecting strings between all the related words simultaneously.
That is the perfect visualization. The paper introduced something called the self-attention mechanism. So instead of crawling word by word, the transformer looks at the entire sequence of words at once and assigns mathematical weights.
To determine how important every word is to every other word.
Right.
So back to our opening sentence. The animal didn't cross the street because it was too tired. How does self-attention actually solve the it problem?
Well, the source breaks down how the model uses something called scaled dot product attention.
Okay, hold on. Scaled dot product attention sounds like a terrifying college math exam. You got to translate that into plain English for me.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So imagine a massive scorecard. When the transformer looks at the word it creates a query. It's basically asking the rest of the sentence, who am I talking about?
Okay.
It then calculates a score between it and every other word. That score is the dot product.
Oh, I see.
Right. And because the word tired is in the sentence, and animals get tired, but streets generally don't, the math naturally aligns.
The system calculates a massive weight connecting it back to animal.
Exactly. And almost zero weight connecting it to street.
That makes so much sense. It's mapping context mathematically.
Yeah.
And it does this using multi-head attention, right?
Precisely. Multi-head attention means the model isn't just looking for one type of relationship. It has multiple independent attention heads running in parallel.
What does that mean in practice?
Well, one head might be solely mapping the syntactic relationship, like the pure grammar of nouns and verbs.
Right.
But at the exact same time, another head is mapping the semantic relationship, the actual meaning and emotional vibe of the words. It is doing dozens of these simultaneous calculations across the entire text at just blinding speed.
But wait, here is my fundamental point of confusion with this.
Yeah.
If the AI is processing the entire sentence, every single word, at exactly the same time in parallel,
Yeah.
how on earth does it know the order of the words? Because without order, the sentence, the dog chased the cat and the cat chased the dog, are identical.
They're the exact same words?
Right. Being processed at the exact same time.
That is the exact problem the researchers had to solve. If you rip away the sequential peephole, you lose the sequence. Their solution was incredibly elegant, honestly. They used something called positional encoding.
Positional encoding.
Right. Since the network wasn't reading in order anymore, they had to inject information about the order directly into the data itself.
Wait, how do you inject order into a word?
By adding mathematical sine and cosine waves to the word's data. Think of it like a sound wave. Different positions in the sentence get different frequencies attached to them.
So they basically tagged every single word with a unique mathematical timestamp,
Yes,
like a coordinate on a map.
exactly like that. Word number 1 gets a specific frequency tag, word number 2 gets a slightly different one, and so on. It provides the sequential order to the model without sacrificing the blinding speed of looking at everything in parallel.
That is brilliant.
What's fascinating here is how this relatively simple shift, abandoning sequential reading for a purely mathematical focus on attention and position, it allowed these models to scale exponentially.
So without this paper,
There is no BERT, no T5, and absolutely no generative AI boom.
wow, we basically taught a machine how to mathematically replicate human context, which is amazing. But here's the pivot.
Okay.
AI uses these massive matrices to perfectly hold on to attention. The human brain, on the other hand, operates on a much more precarious biological processor.
Yes, our hardware is incredibly flaky. It's so flaky. So, how do you keep a human actively engaged with the information you're sharing?
Well, this is where we transition into the cognitive speaking strategies we reviewed. It turns out human short-term memory is remarkably fragile.
Tell me about it.
When you are listening to someone speak, your working memory can really only hold on to that raw auditory data for about 15 to 30 seconds.
Like 15 to 30 seconds, that's nothing.
It is a very tight window.
Mm.
After that 30-second mark, the brain makes a ruthless biological choice. It either transfers that data into long-term memory because it deemed it important, or
Right.
it literally dumps it. The information is gone forever.
So if I'm giving a 10-minute project update at work, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just reading off a slide deck, talking straight through without a break.
You are basically guaranteeing that your team is going to biologically dump 90% of what you say.
Biologically. That's terrifying.
Biologically speaking, yes.
Yeah.
They will experience a cognitive bottleneck, much like the old RNN models, actually. Their hidden state fills up, and they start overwriting the data.
But the sources outline a scientifically backed hack to prevent this data loss. You have to ask a thought-provoking question every 15 to 30 seconds.
Every 30 seconds. And just to clarify from the source, you don't even need the audience to physically raise their hand and answer out loud.
Yeah.
Right? Like rhetorical questions work just fine.
Exactly. Rhetorical works perfectly. When you ask a question immediately after delivering a key point, it acts as a mental bookmark. It spikes the listener's cognitive engagement.
It signals to their brain, wait, this is vital. Move this to long-term storage.
Yes, immediately.
The sources gave 4 specific types of questions you should weave into your communication to trigger this. Let's walk through them. First is, why am I telling you this?
Right. That question guides the audience directly to the purpose. It stops them from wandering or wondering why they're in the meeting and forces them to see the relevance.
Second is, what does this mean?
That one forces the brain to synthesize. You give them raw data, and then asking, what does this mean, forces them to process the essence of that data.
Okay, third one, why should you care?
Crucial for engagement. It brings in the personal touch and highlights the real-life impact. It attaches the data to their own survival or success.
And fourth, how can you use this, which I assume immediately sparks practical application?
Exactly. And the trick is you just naturally weave these into your everyday sentences.
So instead of a manager saying, our server costs are up 15%, so we are auditing the software stack.
They should say, our server costs are up 15%. Why am I telling you this? Because it means we need to audit the software stack.
Oh, that's good.
That tiny addition of the question fundamentally alters how the listener's brain processes the next sentence.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. If you think about it, asking rhetorical questions isn't just a stylistic speaking choice to sound charismatic.
Right.
It is literally a human attention mechanism. Just like the AI transformer assigns mathematical weights to important words to force the computer to pay attention,
Yeah.
asking a question forces the human brain to assign a high cognitive weight to the information you just delivered.
That is a phenomenal connection. Truly, communication is never a one-way download. It's a continuous, reciprocal dialogue.
Yeah.
By asking those questions, even if the room is completely silent, you are sparking a continuous dialogue within the minds of your listeners. You are managing their attention weights in real time to circumvent that 30-second memory wipe.
Okay, so let's say you've successfully hacked their attention. You've used your mental bookmarks. Their short-term memory is transferring your data. They're focused.
You're locked in.
Right. But what style of communication actually makes people want to follow you? Like, if you are leading a team, is it better to be flawlessly logical, highly directive, or something else entirely?
To answer that, we turn to a really rigorous study conducted by the Swiss Armed Forces. They observed 368 military recruits.
A very structured environment.
Exactly. The researchers wanted to isolate exactly which micro-behaviors in a leader's communication actually drive followers' cognition, affect, and behavior.
I have to say, I love the methodology of this study. They showed these 368 recruits video vignettes of a lieutenant talking to his platoon about 3 very standard military scenarios.
Right. Maintaining room tidiness, participating in marching drills, and the big one, voluntarily continuing their service after basic training.
Which are incredibly high-stakes scenarios for a military environment.
Very much so. And they tested 3 distinct leader communication techniques across these videos. First was cognitive communication.
And what does that look like?
This is where the leader focuses entirely on explaining the why, summarizing the situation, and providing clear, logical context.
Okay, makes sense.
Second was behavioral communication. This is giving very precise instructions, setting clear operational goals, and commanding direct action.
Very stereotypical military.
Yeah, exactly. And the third was effective communication. This involves praising the recruits, expressing agreement, making strong, sustained eye contact, and showing emotional confidence.
Now, what makes this a great study is the control variable. The researchers made absolutely sure that across all the videos, whether the lieutenant was using cognitive logic, behavioral commands, or effective praise, the overall tone and friendliness were kept strictly constant.
That isolation is essential for the data. He wasn't screaming in the behavioral video and warmly smiling in the effective one. The baseline demeanor was identical.
And the results were genuinely surprising.
They really were. When it came to the recruits' actual task understanding, like, did they logically know how to clean the room? Or their behavioral performance, did they actually intend to march well? There wasn't a statistically massive difference between the 3 styles.
Which is wild. I mean, I would push back on that if I were guessing the results before reading the study.
Most people would.
Because in the military, you would absolutely assume that barking out incredibly precise behavioral orders or giving an intense cognitive breakdown of the mission is the ultimate way to get compliance.
Right.
But you're saying that even in a high-power distance environment, those didn't necessarily move the needle on execution any more than just maintaining eye contact and offering praise.
That's exactly what the data showed. But here is the massive twist. Where the researchers did find a significant, undeniable spike was in the recruits' perception of the leader's warmth and charisma.
Really?
Yes. And that spike was driven almost entirely by the effective communication techniques. Praising, agreeing, and making eye contact made the recruits perceive the leader as highly charismatic and deeply warm, far more than setting clear goals or explaining the mission did.
Even in the military, that is the part I keep coming back to. We aren't talking about a trendy tech startup with beanbag chairs. But even in uniform, effective connection is the secret sauce for charisma.
This raises an important question, though. Why is that the case? Because currently, we train leaders almost exclusively on what to say. We give them MBA courses on cognitive strategy and behavioral goal setting. But if you take an evolutionary perspective, human emotions didn't evolve just to make us feel nice. They evolved as rapid, high-stakes information signals.
Like a biological shortcut to assess danger or safety.
Precisely. Effective communication conveys a deep sense of relational safety. When a leader uses effective techniques like eye contact, validation, they are bypassing the logical brain and signaling directly to the follower's nervous system.
Saying, we are connected, I see you, you are safe here.
Exactly. And that feeling of emotional resonance naturally builds trust, and we interpret that trust as charisma. The followers don't just understand the task, they feel biologically drawn to the person assigning it.
Okay, so we've established the architecture. We need to foster this emotional, effective resonance to be seen as charismatic leaders. We need to project warmth. But how do we physically manifest that warmth into a room?
Like mechanically.
Yeah, mechanically. What is happening in our bodies when we speak with presence?
Well, it all comes down to the physics of acoustics. We often think our vocal cords do all the heavy lifting when we speak, but they really just start the process.
They just made the initial sound.
Right. The vocal cords merely create a simple, relatively weak sound wave, basically just a buzzing noise. The actual tone quality, the richness, the authority, and the warmth of your voice that comes from that sound wave bouncing off the reflective surfaces inside your body.
Your resonating cavities.
Exactly. There are 4 main vocal resonance chambers in the human body. You have the nose, which gives a bright nasal twang. You have the mouth, which provides a mellow conversational quality. You have the pharynx, or throat, which can give a gravelly or edgy quality.
And finally.
The chest, which provides that deep, resonant power and warmth.
And the sources gave some amazing practical exercises to feel and train these resonators because they aren't just empty spaces. They are surrounded by muscles you need to keep healthy.
Very true.
For the pharynx, there's the yawn and swallow exercise.
Yeah.
You try this by opening your mouth like you're about to yawn, but you attempt to swallow at the exact same time without actually swallowing.
Oh, that's a tough one.
It is.
Yeah.
But you immediately feel all those muscles in the back of your throat stretch and tighten.
It's a great way to build awareness of where your voice is living. And for chest resonance, which is so crucial for that authoritative warmth we just saw in the military study, you place your hands flat on your lower ribs.
Okay.
When you take a deep breath to speak, you should actually feel your ribs and back muscles physically expand outward against your hands.
And we absolutely cannot forget lip trills. You basically snort like a horse, making a continuous roar while keeping your lips incredibly loose. It looks ridiculous, but it completely relaxes the muscles around the vibrating vocal cords.
It really works, though.
It does. So
Yeah.
if we look at the big picture of acoustics, the sources use this brilliant analogy. Think of your vocal cords like a brass player buzzing their lips into a tiny metal mouthpiece.
Okay, I like this.
If you take that buzzing mouthpiece and plug it into a trumpet, the sound wave bounces off the tight steel tubing and sounds bright and piercing. But if you take that exact same buzz and plug it into a trombone, it sounds deep and warm.
The buzz didn't change.
Exactly. The instrument changed. Your physical body is the brass instrument.
I love that analogy because it perfectly illustrates the mechanics. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, there is absolute magic in the physics of resonance. It isn't just about sounding better to your audience.
What else does it do?
When you have good resonance, the acoustic energy reflecting off your body's cavities, your chest, your mouth, it actually feeds energy back down to your vocal cords.
Wait, let me make sure I'm getting this. The sound wave goes up, hits the roof of your mouth or your chest, and pushes back against the vocal cords.
Yes. It's called an acoustic feedback loop. The reflected acoustic pressure pushes back down the windpipe and actually helps the vocal folds come together more efficiently. It helps them resist the air pressure pushing up from your lungs.
That is wild.
It really is physics magic. This means that when you use your resonators properly, you can speak with significantly greater power and volume, but with far less physical strain on your throat.
So you aren't forcing the muscle.
No, you are literally letting the physics of your body's architecture do the heavy lifting for you.
Okay, let's bring this entire journey full circle for you listening. We promised a masterclass on the architecture of attention, and it is just amazing how deeply interconnected all of this is.
It really is. We started at the absolute cutting edge of computation, exploring how a transformer model uses the parallel scale dot product math of self-attention matrices to deeply understand language without getting bogged down in sequential bottlenecks.
Right. Then we zoomed into your own brain, realizing that our short-term memory acts as a massive biological bottleneck, ruthlessly dumping data every 30 seconds unless we hack it using rhetorical questions to force mental bookmarks.
From there, we looked at how to project leadership. We found that even in the strict, uniform world of the military, it is effective communication, relational safety, praise, eye contact that generates true charisma and makes people actually want to listen.
And finally, we learned that projecting that charismatic warmth isn't just a mindset. It is a physical, acoustic reality.
Exactly.
It is the literal bounce of sound waves off your chest cavity, creating a physics loop that feeds energy back into your vocal cords. So whether you are typing a prompt for an AI, delivering a massive keynote presentation, or just trying to lead a 10-person Zoom meeting, you now possess these specific underlying mechanics of how to capture, hold, and project attention.
You've seen the blueprints, you know how the architecture works.
Exactly. But we want to leave you with a lingering thought today, something to mull over as you go about your week. We've seen exactly how machines calculate attention, and we've seen how human biology responds to acoustic resonance and rhetorical timing.
Right. The mechanisms are clearly defined now.
So if an artificial intelligence model eventually learns to perfectly mimic the acoustic chest resonance of human warmth, and it calculates the mathematically perfect timing to ask you a rhetorical question, to hack your 30-second memory window, will we perceive that machine as a charismatic leader?
That's a terrifying thought.
Or at the end of the day, are we all just a complex set of attention weights waiting to be optimized? Next time you find yourself entirely captivated by a speaker, ask yourself, are they just making a good point, or are they perfectly playing the instrument of your attention? Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.